Hello, everyone. Welcome to another SANS OSINT live stream. My name is John TerBush. I'm a co-author of our new SEC 587 Advanced OSINT class, and I'm joined by my co-authors, David Mashburn and Nico Dekens. If you guys want to say hello.
Nico, go ahead.
See if I can get my mic to mute, but it works now. I can do technical stuff, I promise. So hi, my name is Nico Dekens. Some people know me better as Dutch OSINT guy. And well, David, take it away.
Thanks. I'm David Mashburn. As John mentioned, Nico, John, and I have put together the SANS Security 587 course that covers topics in advanced OSINT. And it's our pleasure to be with you here today, also with our special guest, Jeff Lomas.
Hey everybody, Jeff Lomas. I teach SEC 47, OSINT for SANS. Also do a few other things, and my main job is a detective for a major Metropolitan Police Department.
So Jeff, you have done digital forensics, you do cybercrime investigations, and I know you've gotten your hands pretty deeply into tracking cryptocurrency and that sort of stuff. But to start out, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you sort of got into OSINT? Like, how did this all start for you?
Oh, sure. Yeah, well, police work overall, I mean, it's kind of a natural transition into there. But, truly using OSINT, when we talk about OSINT, we talk about just finding truth. So a simple Google search isn't going to show you truth. When I'm looking for truth, I'm looking for things that are lead to help me believe that something is true or not. And that's kind of where I started, was my curiosity. So when I started investigations, so I've been in law enforcement for about almost 14 years now. And so about probably a little over half of that, about 8 years, I've been a detective. So, you start at one point, but probably I really got into it more into it when I started doing, digital forensics, and I started seeing some connections that were out there. And so if you have a curious mind, like you all do, it's just a natural progression that you go over to. So, for me, it was more of a necessity. So I need to capture things when I see them, because we know that things go away. That's kind of what we kind of do in OSINT. Well, I need to pivot on things when I find connections, when I find relationships. And that's when, we start doing those things. And then as happenstance would have it, SANS and my path crossed, and I had the opportunity to teach others this what we consider a trade now. So that's, I guess, in a way, is a very kind of just maybe sometimes your career things happen in a lucky manner, but sometimes it just kind of happen in a logical progression where you kind of move from one step to the next.
Makes sense. Sorry, heard something in the background there. So we're here to talk about cryptocurrency today. Before we dive into a lot of techniques and things like that, you and I both know that cryptocurrency, in at least many versions of it, can sort of be tracked. You do have, in many cases, an open blockchain, but there are people out there that sort of sometimes think, hey, I'm paying in Bitcoin, it's anonymous, I can't be tracked, right? So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how cryptocurrency, sort of what the setup is, how we can find things using open source concerning cryptocurrency.
Sure. Yeah, good question. So when you said anonymous, you kind of hinted towards it already. We don't consider the transactions anonymous. They would be called pseudo-anonymous. So they're anonymous until you have the context. They're anonymous until we find what's called weak parts in the chain. Weak parts in the chain meaning identifiable places like exchanges or other types of intelligence that we already know about. So if we go all the way back to, if you have no idea what cryptocurrency is, or you have a very small idea what it is, when we're talking about these blockchains, we're talking about decentralized blockchains. So in other words, we can all get on this one system together, and we don't have to trust each other. I can send Bitcoin over to or Ethereum over to David over there, and I don't have to have any sort of trust. I just have to have an address, and I know that something's going to go through. you might ask yourself, well, how do I know that thing's going to go through and somebody else isn't going to intercept it or take my funds or anything? Well, it's because we have a system set up where it's called proof of work. And that's kind of the big thing that's been in the news these days, because these decentralized blockchains, for the most part, are all proof of work. So computers doing math. That's a simple way to think about it. So computers are doing lots of math to generate what's called the transaction hash. So every transaction that's on the blockchain is, on most blockchains, should be immutables. In other words, it should not be able to be changed or erased. Because once that happens, that trust goes away. So every transaction, so again, going back to the scenario, I'm sending money over to David, my wallet is going to send some kind of crypto assets or some kind of value over to David's wallet. Well, David's going to receive that, and we're going to have, so in that transaction, we're going to have my wallet and David's wallet. In the middle of that, we're going to have the transaction hash. So that transaction hash says that that transaction occurred at this date and this time. And all those things are, dated. So we talk about dates. It's all going to be in UTC. So again, this is a worldwide thing, decentralized. And so that's the basics of it. Now, as you get further deeper into this, you're going to see some variations of that. Cryptocurrency is kind of like on it's like an accelerated timetable. So it's tech that's even more accelerated than when we talk about computers. So in computer security, it used to always be, people had everything all in their one system. And then they went to the cloud and they said, hey, we're going to go cloudless. And then but cloudless just means back to my computer, right? Well, and cryptocurrency is kind of the same way. Decentralization is great, right? Well, because we came from a centralized banking system. Well, now what you're saying is, the proof of work is too much, because you can see a lot of computers doing math and people complain because of environmental reasons. And there's all these computers doing all these processes, trying to mine Bitcoins and a lot of other cryptocurrency. And so what they want to do is go to proof of stake. And proof of stake is nothing more than centralized cryptocurrency. So we've gone right back to where we started at with centralized banking, and that's kind of where it's heading right now. But for now, the mainstay, the backbone of cryptocurrency is primarily Bitcoin, and we might talk about that today. I don't know what you guys have planned. And then we'll have we have the Ethereum blockchain, which is if you're familiar with Web3. When they say Web3, they're really just kind of referring to technologies that are built off a lot of technologies that are built off of the Ethereum blockchain.
So, John, let me jump in there real quick. So, Jeff,
Sure.
Thank you for that overview of blockchain, because I know not everybody may be familiar with it, and kind of getting that level setting is so important. Now, you mentioned the idea of it being pseudonymous, and that you're really trying to find the weak link there from the technology of the blockchain, right? Unless we can associate an identity with a particular address, that's really where the idea of anonymity comes into play. So how is it we start to make some of those relationships to remove that sense of anonymity on these transactions?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if you went to, let's say you went to etherscan.io right now. So it's a popular site, but a lot of us in the crypto, it's free. A lot of us in the crypto industry that trades crypto, that we just look at transactions and things like that. And it'll show you the top, the last 20 transactions or so. And I could click on one of those transactions, and I can see that there's a transaction that could be for $1 million, US dollar equivalency, going from one wallet to another. You might say, well, that's a lot of money, but there's no way for me to understand what's happening there because I don't know the context. So the first part of these investigations is,
Jeff, can I interrupt you for a second?
Oh,
can you please turn off either your cam or your VPN, because your connection is really wobbly and we're getting some comments about that. I want the viewers and listeners to have the best experience, please.
Sure. Yeah. Let me turn off my VPN real quick. Yeah. Tell me if it goes down, and then I'll turn off my cam off. Is it better now?
I think so. It has to do with you talking.
It's only when I talk.
Well, the audio has been working, but the video definitely has been choppy.
Okay. Yeah. Well, if I'm going on, then just let me know. I'll turn the video off. No big deal. Okay. Going back to attribution. So the context is the first part. So understanding directionality. Where are these funds going? And sometimes we look at things like, where did things come from? So we have to go one step back. So my situation, I'll have a victim, and that victim will have said, well, my funds were stolen out of my wallet, or I sent these things and I didn't mean to, or something along those lines. So after that, then the whole point is to see, okay, where are these funds going? Over what period of time are these funds heading out? And I'll look at those and I'll say, okay, we have to realize that the people, when these transactions are happening, this is people doing things. So I look at things like, okay, so the funds headed out and they went to where? Now, some of these places like Etherscan.io will have these crypto exchanges already identified. So we have a wallet that belongs to a crypto exchange, and it's already been identified. Once you get to that wallet, you're really kind of at a dead end. You can't see the thing that comes out the other end because that's a whole bunch of other user transactions. You've come to a point where you need to request the information from that crypto exchange in order to get information on who received that transaction. There's no other way besides having that power or the ability to do that. And so if you have a loss or something like that, I feel like I'm on a PSA for cryptocurrency theft for law enforcement, but you need to contact law enforcement because they're typically the ones that can do that. So when we have those wallets hanging when a wallet receives something, you see it go to an exchange. That wallet, especially on the Ether, like on Ethereum blockchain, will belong to that one person. So I think the wallets a lot of times is belonging to one person because we know that, and I didn't mention this before, that person is typically the only person that controls the access, like the private keys or the password to that particular wallet. So whenever that wallet's receiving something, that's probably just one person, one actor. Does that kind of answer your question a little bit? That's a very simple way of it. There's patterns. We look for patterns in behavior. A lot of times we can identify. One of the methods we can use is doing a temporal analysis. And so somebody had a tool that can see like when people tweet, see the hours that they tweet and the hours that they don't tweet. Well, that's the hours that we think they're asleep. We can do the same sort of thing in cryptocurrency where we say, okay, the times of the day that this wallet is active, or when I don't look at receiving, I look at sending, because anybody can send anything at any time. The user has to be sending those things. So I see sent, and the sent will, unless the person's got some crazy sleep schedule, will generally tell me what hemisphere that they're in. At least I can get an idea of where this threat actor might be.
So I have a question for you. So I think, or at least that's an assumption that I'm going to make, that not everybody who is listening or viewing right now immediately knows how to, let's say, detect a wallet address. So a wallet, I think when you talk about a wallet, you're talking about a address. So can you tell us a little bit more how someone could, let's say, during a police raid or someone else or on the internet could stumble upon a wallet and how to identify that they're actually dealing with a wallet or not some other kind of values?
Sure. So when we say wallet, so first, this is on the proof of work here is on a public key, private key system. So just because I have someone's public wallet doesn't mean I have any sort of control over that wallet. So we can view the transaction. So typically with Bitcoin, Bitcoin addresses are going to start with a 1 or a 3 or a BC1. And so I'm going to be able to easily identify that. On the other side, we have, when we think about Ethereum blockchain wallets, something that starts with a 0x and then a big long string of things. Is that kind of where you were going with that, Nico?
Yeah, because I come like you from a background in law enforcement, and I know back in the day when I was still in law enforcement, that was the moment when Bitcoin started to blow up. And every now and then, when police entered some criminal's building, they could have found a piece of paper or a USB thumb drive that contained that string, which
sure
not always made sense to the investigator.
Yeah. So from a Bitcoin standpoint, we have what's called seed words. I think it's where you're going. So seed words can be different. You'll see some random words might be written on a paper. by the way, if you're in cryptocurrency and you're storing your seed words somewhere on the cloud somewhere, it's probably a bad idea. So you don't you don't want to do that. That's where a lot of these stuffs are coming up. Somebody gets access to somebody's simply protected password account online, and then they just enter the seed words in, and then they're in. So a lot of the different wallets. So we talk about Exodus wallet, it's a software wallet, or Treasure, which is a hardware wallet. Treasure looks a little thing like this, little black, looks like I don't even know, looks like a key fob. And those type of wallets can be just restored using just the seed words. So think of seed words as passwords. And sometimes you'll have to be creative. So these seed words you might find might not work on a particular Exodus wallet because there's different technologies out there. So just viewing things is pretty easy. Once you get those seed words, or if somebody gets your seed words, that wallet is now compromised because more than one person has access to that. And it's another thing to consider. If we seize these things, in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking somebody else probably has access to this as well. Because anybody in the world, anywhere, can have access to this, because again, we're on a decentralized system that's worldwide.
So let me ask you a question. So let's say let's just say a witness now comes in and says, hey, I know someone is doing something very illegal, and this is a Bitcoin address that I know of, and they hand it over to you. From an open source intelligence perspective, what would you do next? So you just get handed a Bitcoin wallet address. What's the next step to do?
Yeah. I mean, that's a hard one to deal with. So, I mean, essentially, what I would look for is, okay, well, what kind of activity is it alleged? Is it like money laundering? Is it drug sales? You have to kind of figure out what the context is. And then, from a tracing standpoint, you start looking at, okay, well, how much total, funds has this thing gone in and out of this one thing? Because remember, when we look at, especially in Bitcoin, when we look at just one address, we're looking at just one address that was provided to somebody out there. This address could have, this wallet could have several other wallets connected to it. And so we're not going to go too deep into that, but one person with one single wallet can have other wallets attached to that wallet. So you'll see wallets, what we call clusters. And those clusters are made by different transactions that are in common. Those clusters that's where the big dollars come in, is having these clusters is like an analysis type thing that some of these tools use. People can create their own clusters and look at things from an analysis standpoint, but it's very time consuming. So I look at clusters.
Pop in real quick and say, for those that don't know, that address clustering is like in Bitcoin, you can find payments made with multiple wallets. So you can sort of understand that there's one entity controlling those wallets to make a payment. So you can track back and find other wallets that are associated with your target wallet that way.
Right. Yeah. And so that's what, especially in Bitcoin, makes it so difficult if you're not using a commercial tool that does that for you. Is because essentially, if I'm given that one wallet, like in Nico's situation, I look at that and I go, okay, where are things coming from? And then I might look another level behind that. Where are they coming from here? And then where are the funds going? So very popular addresses, if you go to places like blockchain.com or etherscan.io, they will be already labeled. So there'll already be some attribution on particular wallets that might be interacting with. So going back to Nico's case, is I see a wallet and a lot of payments looks like it's going to, let's say it's money laundering, and it goes to a Bitcoin mixer. Well, it's right up there with it's right there in that wheelhouse. We can understand that they're in that sort of thing. So then I can understand, okay, it's this particular Bitcoin mixer. We know certain groups are associated with this, and we start from an OSINT standpoint now. We start going to see, okay, what other events have been involved with this, because a lot of this stuff, especially big dollar amounts, are associated with this. So, like, I'll give you an example, a very plain vanilla example, because it's an active case and getting ready to close. But I had a victim that some funds were stolen from their wallet. They said they didn't give the private keys to anybody. It went to this wallet. I've been watching this wallet that it went off to what we call like a layoff wallet. I've been watching this wallet for 4 months. And all of a sudden the funds move. I got notified that the funds moved because I have an alert set up. Well, they went into this, what looks like a Bitcoin mixer of some sort. My tools didn't label as anything. what do I do? What does everybody do? We take an address. So this is Ethereum. We take an address and we pop it into Google and see what happens. And lo and behold, this particular address was identified as a mixer through an article that was written about some other heist that had nothing to do with mine. So in this giant heist, they send all their funds to this with all Bitcoin, what they identified as a Bitcoin or as a cryptocurrency mixer because it's on the Ethereum blockchain. And that service was doing all the laundering. So for me, in my standpoint, for that particular situation, my investigation was over because there's way more funds and everything going in and play on that end because I've identified a mixer essentially. And the resources that would take to get through that weren't really something we could use on our side, if that makes any sense. We look at, dollar loss and things like that.
So Jeff, you used the word mixer a couple different times in there. So for the benefit of those on the stream who may not really be familiar with the concept, can you just give us a broader definition of a mixer and kind of how it works?
Sure. Yeah. So mixers are basically, so from my aspect, okay, I'm jaded. So mixers to me, I think money laundering. Sorry, it's what I deal with. But people can say they can use mixers to create privacy in their transactions. So let's look at legitimate use of it. All right. So let's say I received some funds from a cryptocurrency exchange. And I think that, somebody might be looking at my wallet. Who knows what's going on? But I don't want those funds to be associated with me. So let's say I get funds. So I have funds in my wallet. And I want those funds to be obfuscated. Because if I bring my funds from one wallet to the next into a crypto exchange, people can easily track that. But if I put it into a mixer, okay, so the mixer is nothing more than a wallet that's receiving just tons of transactions. You're talking like hundreds of thousands of transactions. And so let's use easy numbers here. Let's say I put, 5 Bitcoin into this mixer. Now, when you look at this wallet, you'll see, okay, even 5 Bitcoin went in, we can track that pretty easily. But if you look at the outside of that, the outgoing transactions, there's all kinds of crazy amounts. There might be 0.2 Bitcoin, and there might be 100 Bitcoin, and there might be 2 Bitcoin. So at this point, unless we understand more context about that mixture and how it works, how would I be able to track to associate those funds from that original wallet, getting that 5 Bitcoin on the other side of the other wallet? It'd be very difficult. So
yeah, and I guess the other thing that complicates, I guess, as well is that the mixers often take a fee as well. So looking at
this is a service,
funds
right?
in and out, it's not necessarily going to match up. It's part of the provisioning of that service.
Sure. Yeah. So exactly. So they exist because of privatization, but there is a fee. Yeah, it comes along with it. So understanding what they charge, understanding. So these mixers are often they use algorithms, things like that. Sometimes they can be user controlled, but the mixers are largely controlled by machines. The good thing about machines is that they can be kind of predictable, and that's how we reverse engineer these mixers. And you've seen lots of, if you look about Bitcoin mixers or cryptocurrency mixers out in the news, you see a lot of that. Now we're just talking about the Bitcoin side of that. There's other mixers out there, say in the Ethereum blockchain side. So let's say I bring in 100 USDT, so 100 US, it's tethered, it's a stable coin. So 100 USDT equals 100 US dollars. I put 100 USDT in and I want to get out, let's say, SHIB coin, right? I want to get SHIB out. Well, that mixer is going to interact with the contract, and it's going to come out to SHIB, and it's come to another wallet. Again, different amounts, different times. They might wait a certain period of time. That's where, so on the other side, coming out on the outside is understanding, where those funds are going. That can be a big task because they have the advantage of having hundreds of thousands of transactions that make it so much more difficult for us to trace out on the other side. So you can reverse engineer these things, but you can also, again, trace out a bunch of things and make some, logical guesses, which is kind of what we do in OSINT a lot. We're making a lot of logical guesses. What you'll find a lot of times in tracing is that you go down you go down a lot of rabbit holes, just like an OSINT, and you come to a point where like, that was the wrong place, and you go back to the place. And so I don't know if we want to talk about visualization today. So that's why visualization is so important in crypto tracing, is because, especially for my brain, I do my investigations in OSINT using visualization tools like Multigo. It just helps me keep track of where I'm at, especially if I have a long-term thing. Like I told you, I was looking at that wallet for 4 months. There's no other way I could do it unless I was able to visualize it, and I'll set up alerts for myself and be aware when these transactions occur so that we can take action. And when I haven't looked at a case in 4 months, I can go back and understand what's going on instead of having to refocus my brain around it.
So I have a question for you.
Go ahead, Nico.
So when you visualize all that information, you're basically looking at transactions flowing from one node to another node, correct?
Yes.
So my question then is, that's just wallets, that's transactions, but people on average own wallets. So what would you do to identify the owner of a wallet? That's something that I think is for a lot of people interesting, because that's the person who will prop the fruits from basically the profit that has been made. So how can you share maybe some techniques that you use to identify the owner of a wallet?
Yeah. So like we talked about before with weak links, weak parts of the chain. We always consider exchanges weak parts of the chain, at least from a law enforcement side, because they have what's called KYC, know your customer data. And a lot of those places will comply with their orders and give us that ability. Easy way to understand what a wallet is. That isn't always our threat actor though. So to understand this, sometimes we'll have, understand that if you get cryptocurrency stolen from you or something like that, a lot of times this is organized crime. This is more than one person doing this. So it'd be somebody that's on the social engineering side or something like that, somebody that's on the money side. There's different people playing different roles in these things. And you have what's called, in money laundering, we call what's called money mules. So to understand this is again, to understand the relationships. So let's say, Nico, you have a wallet and you've sent out funds to another wallet. And so I look at that wallet. So again, like Nico said, that could belong to a person. That could also belong to Nico. Nico could just be sending funds to his other wallet, just sending along the chain, because you can control more than one wallet at a time. Okay, well, what does that wallet do with those funds? Well, that wallet might send it off to an exchange. Okay, I have to ask for that. And then maybe that wallet, again, and the one I know that might be Nico's wallet, at least unknown suspect Nico, sends funds and that goes to another exchange. Well, hold on, I got two different things here going on. Why are those amounts there? Why did those transactions happen? So then I'm starting to build kind of a relationship thing as far as how these work. Now on the Ethereum blockchain side, we have what's called ENS names. So you've heard of DNS. We have ENS now. So it's Ethereum blockchain's version of having people stake a name to a wallet. So DNS does IP address to website. Well, Ethereum blockchain has the ability to do what an ENS name. So kind of like a website, not really a website, but a website to a very long, 0x something. And that's something that somebody does. They claim their name. So you see those names. So people do. I've seen threat actors create their own ENS wallet to try to legitimize themselves. And so you see those different transactions happen between those, and you start to figure out, okay, how is that related to my case? In other words, if I know my funds, so all I know in my case is my funds are illicit. That's all I know. How are my potential illicit funds being used between different threat actors? Because could this person be just like buying something at like, could this person be buying something at some kind of online merchant or something like that? Sure, some innocent transaction. But could this person be laundering their money over to somebody else so they wash it and that person cashes it out and gives that money to that person later on? Totally possible, stuff we can't see. So we have to keep that in mind, that to delineate between these, illicit transactions and just normal everyday purchases.
Yeah, and I think also we can also just sometimes make it ourselves very simple. If someone, for example, on Instagram or on Twitter says, "Hey, you can buy ecstasy Molly from me, but first send over $100 worth of Ethereum of Bitcoin to this address." Now at least we have a username and probably a profile picture that we can reverse image search, and a username we can search with making use of the Watch My Name.app tool example. So to maybe expose someone that might be the one owning that exposed wallet address. Is that something that you would recommend doing? Or
yeah, I mean, so when I'm doing my data visualization, again, I'm looking at these things from a large investigation. So so that's why in OSINT in general, you should probably be building your investigation from a visual standpoint, because again, coming into an address thing, that might be a post that you found at that one period of time that only existed in that situation. So you could say, okay, at this date and time, this thing was posted, and you could see all the transactions that happened after that to see all those illicit transactions, and then see where those funds are going, if indeed that is the case. Yeah, so essentially we're just looking for people to make mistakes. So they're making mistakes. So like in OSINT, it's like people using usernames across multiple platforms. We love that because we can trace people pretty easily that way. So I want to go back to the let's say people are purchasing things with their Bitcoin address and stuff. Those are also weak points too. So let's say somebody uses funds from a Bitcoin wallet or whatever wallet to pay a particular place, and you find out that place, because you have some other, again, we have other information. So I have other information that show that person made a transaction a particular day. Let's say they're into their email account and they paid a transaction they paid for a website. So they paid Namecheap or something like that. Well, I could subpoena Namecheap and understand, what information was provided to them when that transaction was made. Even if that transaction is, they just gave all kind of bunk information, which is what a lot of
so
people
is
do.
there a workaround if you don't have subpoena powers?
I was going to ask that. So not everyone has law enforcement, right? Have you used chain analysis or some of these other paid OSINT tools, or what are some other things people can do?
So I have, we use in law enforcement, we use commercial tools, but the thing is they only get you to the attribution point. So they get you to the point where you can identify an exchange. No tool is going to be able to, again, on the other side, is going to be able to tell you anything about that particular wallet. Has to be know your customer data. And so people go to these, I guess, some private law firms and places like that. They have subpoena power from a different angle. They can get information that way. But unless you have, some sort of subpoena power in some way, shape, or form, or some kind of cooperation somehow from an exchange, which, there's different exchanges all around the world. There's no other way that we can identify that information, because it's like, it's kind of like somebody going to Cloudflare or something like that. They go to Cloudflare and they're hiding behind the anonymity. The good thing is that they theoretically provided some sort of level of identification. That's the only thing that we're hoping on. Because you have to realize, in an illicit situation, the goal is to cash these funds out to something that they can use. Because these people have to eat.
And unless, like you've said, people make mistakes, or you have cyber criminals that are selling something and they have to say, here's my wallet, send it here, things like that.
And I think that was, John, just to follow up on that, right? That's, the Hydra Marketplace, which I think was recently taken down. I think one of the reasons it seemed to gather the most attention was because it was a cash out point. I mean, it sold drugs and stuff like that, but eventually it got to be so big that it couldn't be ignored, even though it's operating in an unfriendly jurisdiction.
Yeah, and there, some of these things. So, like Nico talked about an Instagram post. Some of these things are the gray area of OSINT. So, and especially in Ethereum, Web3 type stuff, all that stuff. A lot of these things are chapter done in Discord. And so you have to get into these Discord places. So, well, if you're an investigator, I can't say Jeff Lomas, police detective, not gonna let me in that thing. So I have to create I have to create a persona online. That's what a lot of these different investigators that are on Twitter and places like that do, is that they're inside, they know the lingo, they're inside of this community, and they're able to join these multiple Discords again, screenshot things, people providing wallet addresses that are not available anywhere else, but only in that context of that Discord chat. And they can understand who the players are in these things. Because another thing to understand about a lot of these ICOs, these initial coin offerings, and all these other things, these are people that are wealthy already. They have a lot of, which is good for us because they have a lot of assets and they have a lot of history on these different spaces. So, think of it, that's just a big investigation. And so there's a lot of people that are in a lot of these Discord chats and things like that. And that's a lot of work from an investigative standpoint. But again, it's necessary if you want to understand what the context is. That's the only other way to understand it. And so I don't know if that's is getting into Discord chats OSINT? Kind of.
Yeah,
I think so. It depends on the openness of the Discord, right? So if the URL is to be found openly, freely, with no barriers, and there's at least enough people in there that you can assume that it's at least public. So let's say a 4-person Discord, I would not consider that to be OSINT necessarily, but most of these groups, at least that I know of, have several hundreds, if not thousands, of people in there. And with that, the character of that Discord channel is supposed to be open, and the invite themselves are 9 out of 10 times everywhere openly and freely to be found.
And our new course covers operating sock puppets as well as cryptocurrency and stuff. So obviously we think this is OSINT or very OSINT adjacent, right?
So there's a question that I wanted to address real quickly from Fernando that popped up, and it's talking about this issue with Deus Finance and flash loans. He used the word hack. I'm going to say it was really more of an exploit there. So again, that's not, it's a cryptocurrency type operation. It wasn't necessarily exploiting the underlying technologies. It was something that happened on Ethereum. It was really about the way the contracts work on Ethereum, which is one of the differentiators between kind of the Bitcoin realm and the Ethereum realm, is the smart contracts. And basically, I would liken it to the analog of a stock pump and dump. It just happens so much faster that they were able to take an unsecured loan, take it and turn it into a different form of cryptocurrency, which the buying caused the price to rise. And then by the time it came out, they netted quite a bit of money. Again, I think that is, I'm not sure that I would consider that to be a exploitation of the technology. It's more an exploitation of the fact that things move so fast in an automated manner that allowed them to essentially skim this off. So I suspect you see financial controls, but this is really more in the realm of decentralized finance, necessarily than kind of the stuff we're thinking of from an OSINT perspective. But Fernando, I hope that answered your question there. There's a lot of things out there. I think this is really that's more of a operation of the finance versus anything else. And guys,
you definitely see a lot of people taking advantage of the fact that this is decentralized. You have these organizations that may be jankily built together, some sort of structure. They're not monitoring their platform that well, and criminals take advantage of it.
Or some were built as a scam in the beginning. With what was the exchange that had in Canada that had the Netflix documentary on it? The name's, I'm losing it now, but where the whole thing was a scam from the start. Yeah,
they can do exit scams just like you might for some dark web forum or something like that, for sure.
Yeah, we also call them rug pulls. Or people say I got rugged. It's sad that is now a term, rugged. Everybody knows what it is. Yeah, but cool. there's a lot of different DeFi hacks out there. Again, where people are interacting with these smart contracts, which are written in Solidity, that's on the Ethereum blockchain. And there's people are writing this code, and so there's going to be problems with. Everybody knows there's a problem with code, and that's another problem that's out there. It's just not regulated. Who certifies the smart contract, right? Then
once you have that, it's centralized, right? It's not the same thing anymore.
We're right back to centralized somehow. Yeah, it does lead back that way.
So I have a question, and this is also a little bit of a personal interest. Can you explain the difference between, let's say, the normal Bitcoin, Ethereum kind of cryptos compared to the new hype NFTs?
So NFTs, again, we're going back to centralized. So NFTs, again, controlled by a certain players, very small amount of players actually out there. So think about NFTs as, if you're thinking about crypto as just holders of value, that's what an NFT is. But the difference is that it's proof of, a lot of them are proof of stake, not proof of work. So again, some of these transactions on these, again, talking about so many different technologies, some of these things can be undone. So I don't know how much I trust a system that's only controlled by a couple of people that can be undone. That can be changed, can be manipulated that way. So so I always, the way I best explain, because I have to explain these things to judges and to for prosecutors and other people that I work with. And so these, again, NFTs are just digital holders of value that's managed on a more centralized system. That's controlled by a very small amount of people. Because somebody has, if it's not decentralized, meaning everybody has a piece in it, it's centralized, meaning only a couple of people have.
And does that mean that makes it easier from an OSINT perspective to identify who owns a specific NFT or a piece of something that has a certain amount of value?
Well, kind of. So you have sites like, so when we talk about NFTs, you have sites like OpenSea, and OpenSea is a provider for NFTs. People have different names in OpenSea, so they'll have one person that'll own a whole bunch of NFTs. When we talk about, so money laundering in general, we look for patterns. In investigations, we look for patterns. And so I would say, okay, what kind of NFTs does this person own? Who have they traded with? You can see relations on OpenSea. Again, OpenSea is not the only one, but they're the largest. And so is this person collecting a bunch of, what do they call that? There's so many different apes out there now. I don't know which ones are valuable, which ones aren't. But some people, let's say from a investigation standpoint, this person just collects NFTs of white papers. What's a white paper value? Why are they paying $500 for this white paper? And then why is it just exchanging hands back and forth between the same people?
It's like an old school dry cleaner where they have all this money, right? It's like, what's going on there?
Yeah. So you start to think to yourself, it's just investigative mindset. What's the value of this thing? Why is this thing being moved? Who is it being moved between? Again, that's when visualization comes into to be a necessity, is because there's no commercial tools out there. So the commercial tools are always behind. So there's no commercial tools that will be able to visualize the transactions between different people with NFTs. They just don't. There's commercial tools that are out there right now, paid tools, that still don't visualize Ethereum blockchain and related transactions. They just don't. So for a long time, using certain tools. That's why I went over to Maltego, was to do it myself, because the tools don't visualize it myself. Is it a lot more work and time and things? Yeah. But it's the only way my brain operates. I know me, and the only way I can get my mindset into that, again, is going back to that visualization, looking at the relationships, places like OpenSea.
So, and for those that don't have a budget, of course, you can map out similar things in good old Excel spreadsheeting tools and that kind of thing, because in essence, it's all about A to B, B to A, B to C traffic that you're trying to visualize and map out. Correct?
And I mean, even the OSINT Combine, so drop there a minute, OSINT Combine has a visualization tool, and if you put a Bitcoin address into it, it'll do visualization for you. But again, it's a tool that's operating within the browser, and that thing has limitations. So if you have a bunch of transactions, it's not gonna met out very well. So what I would always say is, if you're starting out, you don't have a big budget, use tools like blockchain.com and etherscan.com to understand those things. Maybe use a free tool like Maltego to manually map them out yourselves. There's places again like OSINT Combine that can do Bitcoin transactions visually. There's a whole bunch of sites out there that offer this free tier of tracing and things like that. But to realize, when you're paying for these visualization tools, you're also paying for attribution. It's not just a visualization standpoint. It's attribution you can't get anywhere else because of technologies they've deployed out there that are gathering all this information and giving it to you. Well, analysis work that no one person could ever do.
Okay. I think we're almost getting close to the end of time of the hour. I've one last question that I would like to ask you, Jeff. So if there's one key takeaway thing that you think people that are in OSINT or start out in OSINT and want to spend time investigating any crypto, what would be your number one tip? Where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, that is tough. So I would, the first thing I would do is, understand the basics of the technology. So there's so many different, basics of, watching YouTube videos about how transactions work and things like that. I can't point you in any one direction. That's really the problem in this space, is because, the training is, even the paid training is all over the board. I've taken paid training where it's like, this is cryptocurrency, and then this, people do illegal things with cryptocurrency, but that doesn't help me from a tracing standpoint. I want to learn how to trace. So I can't put you in one place. So I would say learn about the technology. So understand, not the deep technology about, the algorithms used in Bitcoin. Don't worry about that. Think about, okay, when people make a transaction, what does that look like? Do that yourself, trace some of that yourself, do the visualizations like I was telling you before, using things like from Maltego, and do those manual things yourself to understand, pick a scenario and just work with it and see if you can trace that thing. The more your brain gets wrapped around how that technology works and how those things happen, the better off you'll be. And that's the soft top method. Now there's the big, I'm not here to promote cryptocurrency tools, but the big players are Chain Analysis and Elliptic. They offer training. I haven't taken any of it. Is it good? I don't know. So there's just a lot of, this space is so new that you can't really start at one place. So I would say, watch as many videos as you can, read as many things as you can about it. Understand when you see these big, these news, things happen in the news, people getting money taken from them, go do it yourself. There's no better way of learning this thing, but doing it yourself and tracing and seeing how that looks like in the blockchain. So you can understand that context, going back to context, understanding how it works.
So like most things in OSINT that you're not familiar with, it really does come down to familiarization and understanding how things work. And then you can start doing that pattern matching and pulling strings on things. Awesome.
Yeah, just Google it.
Oh, go ahead. Okay, cool.
So just Google it. Well, that's probably the best thing to do. And also, maybe a tip, if you want to play around with making transactions, maybe set up your own wallet for maybe something like Dogecoin, where you give it like $10 worth of money, and then you can play around with making your own transactions in and out to understand how the technique itself works.
Yep. Good stuff, Jeff. Thank you for joining us today. This was pretty enlightening. Hope everyone that joined us got something out of it and knows more now about cryptocurrency and tracking and all these things. So thanks again. We should be back next month with something else for you. And thanks again for joining us, everybody. Nico, David, Jeff.
Thanks, everybody. And I hope to see you at the next list.